Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our latest, what's the latest Power Lunch and Learn. That means we squeeze in lots of hot tips and knowledge into a quick half an hour or so while you can sort of inhale your lunch or have a cup of soup or whatever. So please feel free. This is all part of our Together for Business campaign. We've been working very hard since the beginning of the crisis to support businesses, bring them knowledge transfer, networking, and supporting them in any way we can, including sort of latest restrictions and regulations and grants, etc. And obviously in terms of providing lots of networking opportunities as well. So do feel free to connect in the chat and ask any questions. So I don't want to use up our precious time. So I'll come in at the end and do a roundup, but without further ado, if I can introduce Kate Galbally, who is a fantastic chamber champion and is going to present her top tips for productivity today. Over to you, Kate, if you want to unmute. There we go.
Hi there. Sorry, I was having a wee technical blip there. So can you hear me okay now? Yeah. Okay, thanks so much for the lovely introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to see you all. Nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces as well. So for those that I've not met before, my name is Kate Galbally. I'm a productivity coach and professional organiser based in Milngavie, and I help busy decision makers to manage their time and organise their space. The way that I do that is through time management and productivity coaching, either one-to-one or in workshops, as well as helping people with their decluttering projects, whether that's big or small, in their homes and offices, all with an emphasis on getting them better organised so that they can spend their time and attention on the people and activities that are important to them. So what I'm hoping to do over the next 20 minutes or so is really just give you some practical tips for improving productivity. What I'm going to do is basically highlight 5 of my favourite tips and just explain them in a wee bit more depth, and really just try to highlight some positive actions that you can then take away and apply either at work or home. And there will obviously be plenty of opportunity for question and answers at the end. So firstly, what I'd like to do is to hear from you, and just if any of you would be happy to share productivity challenges that you have. It'd be really good to have some examples that we can explore. Would anyone like to share a challenge that they have? Yes, Badil.
My biggest challenge is because I do so much networking. I've got a little book that I scribble things down in, but I never quite get the time to get back and process them all, so put them in a right order or place. I just have notes everywhere, and I'm hoping that Christmas is going to just be getting rid of notes and filing them somehow.
Okay, that's great, thank you. So it's really about capturing that information and then what to do with it next, the sort of the follow-up. Yeah, okay. And at the moment, is that information all in the notebook, or is it fragmented across various different places?
Notebooks.
Notebooks.
Yes, there's about 5 of them. And some of them are just loose sheets.
Okay, that's a great example, thank you. Would anyone else like to share an example of a challenge that they have? I can't actually see all of you, so if anyone has one, just unmute and dive in. Anyone else at all?
I might contribute,
Sure.
which is probably actually Laura's just put one in the chat, which is procrastination, getting started.
Okay.
If you want one off me, I'll give you it.
Oh yes, please.
I would say the difficulty of, I mean, probably like lots of people, we are expected to do more and more and manage more and more, spin more plates, and I guess it's how you sort of keep focused when you've got, so, you know, you've got someone emailing you urgently, you've got someone phoning you urgently, you know, and trying to sort of coming off things that sometimes take, you know, I guess it's that thing where what I do so many things, you know, let's say I'm writing a bit of copy or a press release or something, and I've read some of the stuff about, you know, it can actually take you 45 minutes to get you back into that headspace whereby you're right in the middle of it and being quite productive, and then you get taken out of it again, and you have to reboot and restart, sort of thing. So I guess that's sort of something I find sort of quite a big challenge.
Yes, yeah, and as you've touched on, I think that's really quite common, because there's so many different priorities and also so many different methods of communication now as well, that you can be getting pulled in so many different directions, that it can be quite difficult to manage sometimes. Has anyone else got any before we move on?
Some more in the chat. I don't know if you want me to bring them up or go
yes, please. I
person.
I can't see the chat box.
Okay. Right, I'll bring them up. So Stuart has put paper piles on my desk, finding the correct papers from the pile. Does that cover it, Stuart?
Yep, that's it. Classic lawyer's problem.
Okie dokie. And Stuart, do you have the papers that are on your desk? Are they all the ones that you're actively working on at the moment, or is your desk becoming a bit of a filing system?
It's more stuff that I tend to look at it and think, oh, that's urgent, and I put it aside, and at some point it becomes urgent, then I have to find it again. But it's more, there is stuff in that pile that hasn't moved for months that isn't, that's the whole point. It isn't that, I know possibly the only solution is go through it and bin it if you haven't looked at it for 2 months, but I have to come up with the courage of dealing with that a wee bit.
Okie dokie. Well, yes, there's one of the tips that I think will be quite applicable for that challenge specifically. Great, thank you. That's a great example. And one more, if there's one. I
just wanted to say that I kind of struggle when I've got a lot of Zoom meetings on in a day, but then maybe I've got like half an hour or 40 minutes between ones, and I try to be, you know, productive during those times, but I feel I end up faffing and a bit of procrastination, I think. And so, yeah, just looking for some tips on a way to kind of get me focused into maybe a smaller task or something, so that I'm using the best of that small time between my Zoom calls.
Okie dokie. Yep, great. There's definitely one tip that I can think of from the 5 that would potentially help with that, or well, at least one, if not 2.
Good stuff.
Great, okay. So moving on, as I say, what I've done is I've just pulled together 5 of my favourite tips to highlight to you today. So the first one is very simple, and it's to use a timer. So one scientifically proven tip for beating procrastination is to basically identify a micro goal. So just a really, really bite-sized chunk of progress that you could make on a task. Set a timer for 5 minutes and then dedicate those 5 minutes working towards that one goal. So as I say, it has to be something really quite bite-sized, but tangible and achievable. So say, for example, if you were writing a report, or if you had a report to write, or a blog or something like that, your 5-minute goal might be that you come up with your section headings, or it could be that you do a quick bit of research and find an appropriate statistic or a quote that you might use in that report or blog. But the key is to just have a specific goal that you can achieve in 5 minutes, and then get the timer set and get it going, and really isolate yourself into that task for 5 minutes. It works in a couple of ways, because by using the timer, starting the timer obviously acts as a prompt to get you started. And then obviously having that time set on the timer, it also acts as a timekeeper, so you know you've got a definite end point as well. And what can be quite helpful as well is actually before you set the timer, just do a 5-second countdown and literally just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and get your timer going. And there's almost something a bit uncomfortable about starting a timer and then not doing anything. Excuse me, I always think of it a wee bit like if you were to sit at a set of traffic lights and the traffic lights turned green and then you didn't move. It would feel almost uncomfortable. You would feel, you know, I should be moving here. So by getting the timer going, that can help, as I say, it can help to minimize procrastination if you do the wee countdown and get your timer going. And actually research has shown that obviously common sense dictates that if you start a task, you're improving your chances of completing that task. But research has actually shown that if 100 people get started on a task, getting started is sometimes the difficult bit. But if 100 people start the task, 80 of them will finish it. So simply by starting the task, you are already significantly increasing your chances of completing that job. And that's actually, the name for it is the Zeigarnik effect. So it's just that micro goal and your 5-minute timer. The second tip that I would mention is called the 2-minute rule. Very, very simple. This is from a book called Getting Things Done by a gentleman called David Allen. Don't worry about writing that down or anything. I've got a wee list of resources for you in a moment. But the 2-minute rule, very simply, is if a task is going to take you 2 minutes or less, just do it. And it's actually amazing how many fiddly wee tasks you can do just using that rule. And the more and more that you can apply that as your almost sort of default thinking, if you like, you'd be amazed how many little things that you can just deal with there and then. They never need to end up going onto a to-do list or a notebook or a diary. So it might be things like just acknowledging an email. It could be looking up a phone number or looking up a bit of information that you need. So when that thought comes into your head, just think to yourself, would it take me 2 minutes or less? And if the answer is yes, just do it. And again, this has been shown to be a really effective way of minimizing procrastination, because you literally ask the question. If the answer is yes, you just get on with doing the task. Yes, Damon.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you've got a phone nearby. There's a wee bit of a buzzing because I think I've muted everyone else, so there's a wee bit of buzzing. Just.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll just switch that off.
Thanks.
It's not behaving itself. There we go. That's it off. Has that helped?
Yeah, it was just intermittent, so just. Okay. Cheers.
Okay, so yes, so as I say, that 2-minute rule is a really, really handy wee rule to bear in mind. And particularly for, as Jen has mentioned, those wee periods of time, perhaps in between meetings, you might have some tasks that you could do. You've maybe got a wee list of options of things that you could potentially work on. But those top 2 tips there, both of them, I think would be quite good for those periods of time, because those are things where you've perhaps got tasks that you could make progress on in those chunks of time without it being too sort of chunky or weighty in terms of the actual bulk of stuff that you need to get done. But it's just a way of gathering a bit of momentum and, as I say, just helping with your motivation and hopefully minimizing procrastination as well. So the third tip that I would recommend is that you consider, excuse me, I would generally consider ditching to-do lists, as in traditional to-do lists where you've literally just got a huge list of all the things that you could or should be doing. And in favour of, and instead of that, I would recommend using a very diary-led approach. So what that really means is basically all the activities that you need to do and all the commitments that you have, I would recommend centralising all of those in your calendar so that you've basically got one place where all your commitments and your activities are recorded. You've got a visual template of what your week is going to look like. And obviously things can crop up and things might shift or change or tweak. But by doing that, what you can do is you can get a real sort of visual sense of your commitments and your capacity, and how much time you're dedicating to particular activities. This can help with, again, with minimising procrastination, because if you've already predetermined when you're going to do something, as well as what you're going to do, then the research has shown that if something is scheduled, there's a 75% better chance of something happening if it's actually been attached to a specific day and time. So by shifting things out of a to-do list and actually attaching them to specific points in your calendar, then that can really help with, again, with your momentum, your general productivity and your achievements in terms of just getting things done. The fourth one I would mention is if you've never really explored the notification settings in your phone or your computer, it's well worth maybe spending 20 minutes or so just having a wee look at your notifications and perhaps making some adjustments. As Damon said, the length of time that it can take you to refocus on a task after you've been interrupted or distracted can really be quite significant. Excuse me. And obviously that's influenced by, you know, how complex the task is that you're working on and how big a distraction you've had. But one really simple but effective way of trying to minimize some of the distractions that we have is by really reducing the number of notifications that you get. So what I tend to do is the only sound notifications I have are phone calls and texts. Anything else is just the wee red badge icon. So I basically don't have anything that either pings, swishes, flashes onto my screen, pops up, pops down, and I'm not interrupted by notifications unless, as I say, unless it's a text or a phone call. And that can really, again, that can really help with your concentration, as long as you are sort of minimizing those notifications. And you can set it up in such a way that you're still notified, but you're just not getting that visual or audible interruption. One, if you like the sound of the minimizing the distractions, one app that I've recently discovered is called Forest. So what that does is that's really if you're needing to focus on work and you're perhaps conscious that your smartphone might be a bit of a distraction. What you can do is if you install the app, then if you've got a bit of work that you want to focus on, what you do on the app is you basically plant a virtual seed, and that seed will grow into a tree as long as you don't interrupt, as long as you don't then go on back on your phone. And what happens is you'll watch the tree grow, and if you go onto the app partway through, then the tree dies. But one of the nice things about it is the makers of the app, they actually invest in the planting of real trees. So it's almost like there is actually a sort of real life impact if you constantly just dismiss the app. So that can be quite a nice way of, again, just minimizing those interruptions if you've got that real deep focus work to do. And lastly, the one relating, which I thought would be most helpful for Stuart's challenge, is this is a technique that I heard of years ago, and I've just really always applied it ever since. So the Raft Technique stands for refer, act, file and trash. And what I would recommend is if you are dealing with either paperwork or emails or even tasks, if you can get into the habit of applying the Raft technique, then what that can help you do is it can help really minimize the number of times that you handle a piece of information. So say, for example, with an email, rather than reading the email when it comes in and then perhaps thinking, well, I'll go back and deal with that later. What I recommend doing is only having your email program open when you're actually processing emails and you're able to start rafting them, if you like. So I don't open my emails unless I've actually got a wee block of time to process whatever's in the inbox. And by just sifting through your messages and applying this technique, then you can either refer, so it could be that you need to refer that email to someone else. You act on it, so that could be as simple as just sending a response, or it might be that you need to go and get another piece of information before you can respond. But the next action is that you need to go and get that information. It could simply be that you can file it. So perhaps if it's a bit of information that you need to keep, but you don't need to take any action on, then that could be something like a confirmation for an event that you've booked on. So there's nothing else you need to do at that stage, but you can just file that email and that gets it out the inbox. Or lastly, obviously there is always the option that you can just trash it. So if it's something that you don't need, or it's just a bit of information that you've taken in that information and then you can just discard it. But again, it's just getting rid of it out the inbox so that it's not then niggling away at you as something that you still need to do something with. Another couple of tips just on emails. I would always recommend, as much as possible, I would really minimize the number of folders and subfolders that you use. The reason for that is partly so that you are really minimizing the thinking that's involved when you're filing emails away. You really don't want to have to think too hard about where an email should belong, and really just try to keep it to a handful of folders. It also means that if you've only got a handful of folders you're listed down the side of your screen, it avoids that scrolling up and down trying to find the right folder to put an email in or to retrieve an email from. So again, just really simplifying it, and by minimizing the number of folders and applying the Raft technique, what that can help you do is it just means that the processing of your email can become really quite swift, smooth, and automatic, and you can just get into quite a nice calm flow when you're dealing with emails. So those are a few of the favourite tips that I've got. In terms of the resources, I've mentioned a couple of these already, but the first one I mentioned was Getting Things Done. So that's the David Allen book. There is also a website and podcast, and his 2-minute rule is certainly one that I would recommend, but there's lots and lots of different tips and strategies in the book that you would also perhaps find helpful. If you want to really get focused on some work, then the Forest app is the one that I mentioned. The default diary, in partnership with the Chamber, I'm doing a workshop next week on the 15th, and that's specifically around default diaries and that diary-led approach that I mentioned. I'm also doing one on procrastination on the same day with the Chamber. And on the 17th, if you would like an opportunity to have perhaps a wee bit of company and a wee bit of accountability while you're working, I'm hosting a co-working session on the 17th. There's no fee for that. I'm just asking for a small donation for the NHS. But that's basically an opportunity to come together on Zoom and then just work independently on our own tasks, but with that wee bit of accountability, and we'll work in blocks of 25 minutes with 5-minute gaps in between, And so there's a wee bit of an opportunity there for some informal networking as well. So that brings me to the end of the presentation, and I'd like to invite any questions that you have.
Okay, you can maybe take the screen down, Kate, and we might be able to see everyone. Can you see everyone now?
I can, yes,
All right,
that's
brilliant.
better.
Okay, so if anyone's got any tips or comments, please just raise your hand. There's Debbie there. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Hi, Kate. That was really interesting.
Thanks.
Is there any software that you would recommend using to be more efficient?
There's a couple of things that I use. So I use Trello, which is basically a project management tool. So it's got a website and an app. And what you can do on there is you can basically just have all your projects, all your tasks. You can have within each task or project, you can set up checklists, you can attach documents. You can also assign responsibilities or tasks to other people. And I find that a really, really useful wee tool. And as Badil mentioned, sometimes you've got things across various different notebooks or pieces of software, etc. And I find Trello is a nice way of just sort of centralising lots of information and just having it all in one place, but in a nice organised manner. So I find that really helpful. And the other one that I use is, which I really love, is Capsule. So that's my customer or CRM system, the customer relationship manager system. And I find that really helpful as well, because what I can do on there is I can set up a sort of automated process, if you like, whereby Capsule will automatically send me an email every morning reminding me what I need to do. But it has already, I've got a sort of process set up, so the tasks are already predetermined. I don't have to physically have gone in and said, well, on the 9th of December, I need to remember to do X, Y, or Z. I have it set up in such a way that if I put someone onto a certain, what they call track, then Capsule will almost kind of take it from there, and it will remind me at various stages what to do. So those are the two main ones that I use. Anyone else?
Yep. Any more for any more? No, obviously very comprehensive, Kate. So no, that was really useful, and I think we've run a few of these, and I think people have got a lot of value of just the wee tips, just the wee, even just getting a signpost to some of these resources as well. So hopefully we'll continue our partnership in the new year and continue to bring value to the membership. So thank you so much for that and your ongoing efforts.
You're welcome.
Before we finish, I'll just put in the chat there, we've got, I think we're going to sort of start wrapping our own or the rest of the chamber events up next week. So if you still fancy it, if you've been in lockdown, we have our Christmas night in this evening, which is a collaboration with 4 other chambers. And Philip, tell us who the Britain's Got Talent guy is.
The guest speaker is Edward Reid. You might know him from Britain's Got Talent. He's also on Go Radio on a Saturday night. He is funny, but he's funny when you've had a drink or two.
So it's a wee bit of an early start, 5 o'clock. So, but it's heading to Christmas, so we'll allow drinks from 5 if you fancy joining into that. You'll see the link in the chat and on our website as well. And then the final networking with purpose of the year, I think we're going to finish up next Tuesday at 9:30. So everyone's more than welcome to connect and join us at that as well. So yeah, just finally again to thank Kate for her input during our Lunch and Learn, really valuable, and to thank you guys for connecting and joining us today. Hope to see you again soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much. Bye.